Today, I want to speak about something powerful, something life changing. It's a message we often overlook in a world that demands so much of us. The message is simple: learn to love yourself more than anyone else. Now, that may sound selfish at first, but it's not. It's about survival, it's about strength, it's about knowing your worth. When you truly begin to love yourself, you stop waiting for others to determine your value. You start setting the standard for how you deserve to be treated. This isn't just about confidence or self-esteem. It's about establishing a foundation for every interaction, every relationship, and every decision in your life. Think about it. The way you treat yourself is a blueprint for how the world will treat you. If you constantly criticize yourself, accept disrespect, or neglect your own needs, others will mirror that energy. They will see that you're okay with being overlooked or mistreated, because that's the example you've unknowingly set. On the flip side, when you stand tall in your worth, speak kindly to yourself, and demand nothing less than respect, people are either inspired to meet your standard, or they fall away. Setting the standard means you stop tolerating half-effort love. It means you stop entertaining people who come into your life with confusion, inconsistency, or disrespect. You no longer feel flattered by bare minimums. Instead, you recognize that your time, your heart, and your energy are sacred, and anyone who wants access to them must come correct. And it's not just in relationships, it's in every area of life. It's how you carry yourself at work, how you allow friends to treat you, and even how you speak to yourself in the privacy of your mind. Self-love means enforcing boundaries, not out of bitterness, but from a place of deep respect for your own well-being. You set the tone. You decide what is acceptable and what is not. If someone crosses a line, you address it, not because you're trying to start conflict, but because you know silence can often be mistaken for permission. You show people how to love you by the way you love yourself, by the way you show up for your own needs, your dreams, your healing. You are not being too much when you ask for what you need.
Go.
You are not being hard to love when you set boundaries. You are being someone who knows their worth and refuses to compromise it for temporary acceptance or shallow validation. And the moment you raise your standards is the moment you begin to filter out everything and everyone that was never aligned with the highest version of you. Self-love is the root of resilience. When you genuinely love yourself, you develop an inner strength that cannot be easily shaken by life's inevitable storms. It's not that pain, rejection, or failure stop hurting. They still do. But your response to them changes completely. You become grounded in something deeper than circumstance, your own self-worth. Resilience built from self-love doesn't mean you never fall. It means when you fall, you know how to get back up without tearing yourself apart in the process. It means you don't internalize failure as personal proof that you're not good enough. Instead, you learn to see setbacks as lessons, not definitions of your identity. You stop saying, "I failed, so I'm a failure," and start saying, "I failed, so I'll learn and try again." When you love yourself, you stop being afraid of rejection. Of course, it still stings, but you no longer let it break your spirit, because you've built a foundation within yourself that no one else can tear down. You understand that someone not choosing you doesn't diminish your value. You stop tying your self-worth to other people's acceptance. You stop needing everyone to like you. You stop shrinking or molding yourself to fit in, because you know that who you are is enough. And if someone can't see that, it's not your job to convince them. Self-love also gives you the power to walk away from what isn't for you. That takes a lot of strength. It's easy to stay in what's familiar, even if it's hurting you. But when you've cultivated love within, you begin to prioritize your peace over your fears. You can say, "This situation doesn't serve me," and step away, not because it's easy, but because you now understand you deserve better. That's resilience. That's power. You start to bounce back faster from heartbreak, from betrayal, from disappointment, because you don't let those experiences define you. You allow yourself to feel the pain. Yes, you allow yourself to cry, to grieve, to be human, but you don't unpack and live in that place. You don't allow the bad chapters to rewrite your whole story. Instead, you take them in stride, and you come out stronger, wiser, softer, but never broken. Resilience through self-love also looks like protecting your energy. It means being intentional with your healing, being selective with who you give your heart to, and not letting temporary pain convince you to abandon permanent growth. You start to trust your journey, even when you don't understand it. You start to trust yourself, even when things around you feel uncertain, because you've built a relationship with yourself that isn't dependent on everything going right. It's rooted in the belief that no matter what happens, you'll find your way through. You'll figure it out. You'll come back, not as the same person, but as someone wiser, stronger, and more aligned with the life you truly deserve. One of the most transformative things that happens when you start loving yourself deeply is that you stop settling for people, for situations, for experiences that don't honor the truth of who you are. You begin to realize that almost isn't enough, that close enough is still too far from what you truly deserve. You no longer accept crumbs and call it a feast. You stop convincing yourself to stay in spaces where your spirit feels small just because you're afraid to be alone. When you love yourself, you become more honest about what you need and what you can no longer tolerate. You stop staying in relationships where you have to constantly chase love, prove your worth, or shrink your personality just to make someone else comfortable. You stop being the only one showing up. You stop accepting lukewarm love from people who don't know how to hold your heart with care. You finally understand that love should feel safe, not confusing. That attention is not the same as affection. That consistency matters more than grand gestures. And because you love yourself, you walk away from anything that makes you feel like you're too hard to love. Self-love teaches you that settling is not safety, it's self-betrayal. Every time you say yes to something that doesn't align with your soul, a piece of you starts to dim. But when you choose yourself, you start raising your standards, not to be difficult, but because you now know your value. You understand that peace is priceless, that your time and energy are sacred, that you don't have to accept whatever life throws your way just to feel like you belong. And it's not just about romantic relationships. You stop settling in your career, in your friendships, in your goals. You stop saying this is good enough when deep down you know it's not. You stop surrounding yourself with people who drain you, belittle you, or only show up when they need something. You stop working jobs that don't nourish your spirit or reflect your potential. You stop chasing validation from people who were never meant to understand you. And in doing so, you create space for more, for better, for real. Self-love gives you clarity. It strips away the noise and helps you see things for what they truly are, not just what you wish they were. You stop romanticizing red flags. You stop justifying emotional scraps. You stop tolerating one-sided effort and inconsistent communication. Because now you know what it feels like to choose yourself. And once you've tasted that freedom, it becomes incredibly hard to go back to anything less. You stop operating from fear. Fear of being alone, fear of not being enough, fear of starting over. Instead, you operate from a place of trust. Trust that what's meant for you won't require you to shrink, settle, or suffer. Trust that walking away from the wrong thing makes room for the right one. Trust that your worth is not determined by what you endure, but by what you empower yourself to leave behind. Emotional independence is one of the most liberating and powerful byproducts of learning to love yourself. It means you stop depending on other people to regulate your emotions, to define your worth, or to determine how you feel about yourself on any given day. You begin to understand that your peace, your happiness, your identity, these are not things to be outsourced. They are yours to build, protect, and maintain. When you cultivate self-love, you start turning inward for validation instead of constantly looking outward for reassurance. You no longer need someone to tell you you're beautiful to believe it. You don't rely on compliments to feel seen or attention to feel valuable. You recognize that your worth is not up for negotiation. You learn to affirm yourself in moments of doubt, You become your own anchor, your own safe space, your own biggest fan. This kind of independence doesn't mean you stop caring about others or shut yourself off emotionally. It means you stop being emotionally dependent. It means you no longer hinge your well-being on whether someone texts you back, shows up for you, or gives you what you hope for. You start creating your own joy, your own peace, your own healing, instead of waiting for someone else to deliver it to you. You realize that no one is coming to rescue you, and that's okay, because you've already started rescuing yourself. Emotional independence is especially powerful in relationships. When you love yourself, you stop clinging. You stop fearing abandonment so much that you accept unhealthy dynamics just to keep someone close. You no longer tolerate inconsistent behavior just because you're afraid of being alone. You can enjoy companionship without losing yourself in it. You can be vulnerable without becoming dependent. You can give love without needing it to be your only source of fulfillment. It also means you stop making other people responsible for your happiness. You stop placing the impossible expectation on others to fix you, to complete you, to constantly fill the voids within you. Because now you know how to sit with yourself. You know how to be with your emotions, without running from them, or placing the burden of them on someone else. You start handling your own triggers, doing your own healing, showing up for your own needs. You become emotionally self-sufficient, not in a cold, distant way, but in an empowered, grounded way. With emotional independence comes a deep sense of freedom. You're no longer on an emotional roller coaster based on what someone else does or doesn't do. You stop measuring your day based on how people treated you, and instead you measure it by how you showed up for yourself. You begin to experience a stable kind of peace that doesn't get easily shaken by external chaos. You learn to soothe yourself, to trust your own voice, to calm your own storms, and perhaps most importantly, you no longer feel like you need to earn love, attention, or belonging. You stop performing. You stop shape-shifting. You stop seeking permission to be who you are, because you've already given it to yourself. You've learned how to hold space for your emotions without drowning in them. You've discovered that real security doesn't come from being needed. It comes from knowing you are whole, even when no one is clapping, watching, or holding your hand. When you begin to truly love yourself, something inside you shifts. You no longer view growth as a chore or a punishment, but as a sacred act of self-respect. Growth becomes less about fixing what's wrong with you, and more about uncovering the layers of who you are beneath the pain, the pressure, the projections, and the past. You realize that evolving isn't about becoming someone else, it's about becoming more fully you. Self-love becomes the fuel behind your growth, because it gives you permission to embrace your imperfections, while still striving for more. You stop beating yourself up for where you are, and instead you start nurturing yourself toward where you want to be. You replace harsh self-criticism with compassionate accountability.
Flawless.
You begin,
Flawless.
you begin to look at your flaws and wounds not as things to hide in shame, but as parts of yourself that deserve healing, understanding, and patience. When you love yourself, you naturally become more curious about your potential. You start asking better questions. What makes me feel most alive? What parts of me have I silenced? What do I truly want? Not what others expect from me, but what I desire. You become more intentional about how you move through the world. You start creating space for personal development, not because you feel unworthy, but because you know you're worth the effort. You begin to invest in your growth in quiet, consistent ways. You read more, journal more, take care of your mental health, or pursue skills that once felt intimidating. You open yourself to therapy, coaching, meditation, or whatever tools help you expand. You stop settling for survival mode and start reaching for alignment. And the more you grow, the more you realize growth isn't linear. It's messy. It's uncomfortable. Sometimes it looks like blooming. Other times it looks like breaking. But you stay committed to the process because you know you deserve to thrive, not just exist. Self-love also teaches you how to grow without comparison. You stop measuring your journey against someone else's highlight reel. You stop feeling like you're behind just because your path looks different. You trust your timing. You respect your own rhythm. You celebrate progress even when it's invisible to others, because now you're no longer performing for applause. You're growing for you. This kind of growth extends into every area of your life. You become more emotionally intelligent because you're willing to do the inner work. You grow spiritually because you take time to connect with yourself on a deeper level. You evolve in your relationships because you start showing up with clarity, maturity, and boundaries. Even your environment begins to shift. What you tolerate, what you chase, what you dream about. It all starts rising to match the new version of you that you're building from the inside out. And what's even more powerful is that this growth doesn't come from pressure. It comes from love. Real, steady, patient love for yourself. The kind of love that holds you through the hard seasons and still pushes you. The kind of love that says, I believe in who you're becoming, even when you can't fully see it yet. The kind of love that's not afraid of the shadows, because it understands that growth often begins in the dark. One of the most profound shifts that happens when you start loving yourself is that peace becomes more important than pleasing everyone around you. You stop sacrificing your mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being just to be liked, accepted, or approved of. You begin to understand that constantly trying to be everything for everyone is not kindness, it's self-abandonment in disguise. People-pleasing often comes from a place of fear, fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of not being enough unless you're bending, performing, or giving beyond your capacity. It's rooted in the belief that your value is tied to how useful, agreeable, or self-sacrificing you are. But when self-love takes root, that fear begins to loosen its grip. You start choosing what brings you inner calm over what makes others temporarily comfortable. Loving yourself means you no longer say yes when your body is screaming no. You no longer stay silent to avoid confrontation when your truth is asking to be heard. You no longer tolerate mistreatment under the disguise of keeping the peace, because now you understand real peace never requires you to betray yourself. You stop making yourself smaller so others can feel big. You stop dimming your light so others won't feel threatened. You let go of the need to manage how others see you, because you're finally more concerned with how you see yourself. This shift can be uncomfortable. You might feel guilty at first. You might lose people who only loved the version of you that was always available, always agreeable, always suppressing your needs to serve theirs. But with self-love comes the realization that relationships built on your silence, your exhaustion, or your inauthenticity are not relationships. They are performances. And you're no longer willing to put on a show to be accepted. Choosing peace over people please means setting boundaries, even when it's awkward or hard. It means learning to disappoint others rather than constantly disappointing yourself. It means giving yourself permission to rest, to say no, to walk away, to choose what aligns with your spirit without having to explain yourself over and over. It means embracing the truth that you are not responsible for everyone's emotions, reactions, or expectations. You begin to find peace not just in solitude, but in clarity, in knowing who you are and what you stand for. You stop absorbing the moods and needs of everyone around you like a sponge. You stop carrying the emotional weight of other people's disapproval. And in doing so, you begin to breathe easier. You begin to show up more fully, more honestly, more freely, because you're no longer held hostage by the desire
To be liked.
at the cost of your own well-being. Peace becomes your compass. It becomes the filter through which you make decisions, choose relationships, and structure your life. You realize that saying yes to everyone else means nothing if it always costs you your own sanity. You recognize that living for the approval of others will never fill the emptiness that comes from consistently neglecting your own needs. And so, with self-love as your foundation, you begin to value peace, not the absence of conflict, but the presence of alignment, truth, and authenticity. When you begin to love yourself authentically and unapologetically, the energy you carry starts to change, and so does what you attract. The world around you begins to respond differently, not because it has shifted, but because you have. Self-love alters your vibration. It affects how you walk into a room, how you speak, how you carry yourself. You stop begging for love, attention, or validation because you've already given those things to yourself. And in doing so, you begin to magnetize relationships, opportunities, and experiences that match the energy of someone who knows they are worthy. The truth is, we don't attract what we want. We attract what we believe. If deep down you believe you're not good enough, you'll subconsciously settle for people and situations that reinforce that story. But when you love yourself, your entire
internal dialogue shifts.
you begin to believe you're it, you are enough, that you deserve healthy love, that your dreams are valid. And because your belief changes, your boundaries change, your choices change, your standards change, and those changes send a clear message to the universe and everyone around you. Only what aligns with my worth is welcome here. You attract people who respect your time because you no longer waste it. You attract partners who value your depth because you no longer hide it. You attract friendships that feel safe, balanced, and reciprocal because you've let go of the ones built on one-sided effort and emotional exhaustion. The more you heal, the more you let go of anything that requires you to shrink. The more you grow, the more you attract people who celebrate that growth instead of feeling threatened by it. Self-love becomes a mirror. It radiates through your energy, and people feel it before you even speak. You stop chasing, convincing, and proving. Instead, you begin attracting, not out of manipulation, not out of desperation, but out of wholeness. You become the kind of person who chooses peace over drama, alignment over approval, depth over distraction. And naturally, that starts to be the kind of energy that gravitates toward you. And it's not just about attracting people, it's about attracting experiences. When you love yourself, you stop accepting jobs that drain you, environments that deplete you, and opportunities that don't reflect your potential. You begin to say no more often, not out of arrogance, but out of respect. You begin to say yes to things that truly light you up, things that challenge you, things that pull you closer to your purpose. You stop settling for good enough and start reaching for what feels right. It's a full circle effect. The more you reflect love inward, the more that love echoes backward. You become a magnet for alignment, for growth, for genuine connection. You begin to notice the difference between attention and intention, between presence and pressure, between love that elevates and love that results. And suddenly, you're no longer drawn to chaos, disguised as shaped, or inconsistency disguised as excitement. You want what's real. You crave what feels peaceful. You wait for what feels right. Because now you know, the more you honor yourself, the more life begins to honor you back. What once felt impossible or out of reach now feels like it's finding its way to you. Not because you're chasing, but because you've become the kind of person who's ready to receive it.